You know, so that's what I like finishes.
That's
Yeah.
I really love how you mentioned the Walter Benjamin, the work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction,
Yeah.
the translation, um, because digital scarcity is one of the things that drew me to NFTs in the first place, or to blockchain. Like, it's such the underlying structural technology of NFTs is so interesting because it allows for people to trust information without trusting a central authority. And then it, of course, got taken in this very speculative direction of people buying and selling NFTs, and the aura of authenticity being completely connected to dollar value in the market. I own the JPEG of Beeple's $69 million work. I might delete it. It's like 25 megabytes. It doesn't fit on my computer. But I obviously don't own the certificate of authenticity. I'm not that interested in owning that work. And my favorite part of that work is that it's a labor study, because he made something every day for 13 years. But I think that the digital scarcity piece, it connects to it connects to what you're saying, that the artist makes art, and that there might be a second layer of art, which is the designing of the community or the economics around the art. And some of the most interesting experiments for me in NFTs are things where I'm curious how this relates to your history of collaboration and friendship, because there are works where the blockchain ecosystem allowed people to collaborate and trade works. So to take a digital work and not edition it like a photograph would be, or have an exhibition copy, but to make it function as an original in the Walter Benjamin sense, and then to trade works and to kind of co-create the environment in which they're happening. I'm thinking of this platform called Feral File that was launched with an artist cooperative, where they all made their own individual works, but they also made them kind of like your students, like in class, in conversation. So I feel like that possibility exists, and maybe there's a line from the collaboration that I would love to hear more about.
But excuse me, the collaboration you're talking about, because I'm talking about the collaboration that is basically virtual. So it must be in a virtual space. Of course, there are many experimental stuff that we, for me, are the hybrids of the art world, that they try to make NFTs and also combine with the physical work that are through other little devices that can be connected and used inside the actual object. NFC or stuff like this can be connected and become those hybrids. But for me, that kind of, it's okay if there is. For me, it's not the actual stuff I'm interested in really. Now, for me the importance, gives a possibility, a potential for the also the technology we are using. Is the virtual world, is this virtual space, like we are interacting, for example, through those socials. Those are virtual spaces that we are really actually experiencing and relating to each other. That is part of our experience, is part of our life, our time that we spend with people through those devices. So for me it's very important that this part is included, is part of the discussion if we want to deal with this revolution, because otherwise it's only an hybrid, is something that is not completed. you must be must be at least immersive when if you use technology, this kind of this digital technology, immaterial technology, then it means we really need to know and we need to use it. Of course, with those we can use, let's say, with this experiencing, we also not just wearing gloves and devices, suits that you can interact, but you can also operate in distance with other prostheses that you can operate with robots and other things on another context, on other parts of the world. So, of course, if you're using this technology, you know Stellar. Stellar.
I don't know.
He's an Australian artist that is, he comes from the performance
Okay.
world. Older than me, he's not young, but he comes from the performance, and his works came through also how to extend his body and experimenting technology, extending his body, making the third ear, or the third arm, other parts of prosthesis in his body, so that he can actually extend his experience with all these robots, micro robots, etc. So of course you can connect this virtual world through those other devices. That means you are really extending this technology and of course the process of experiencing with your flesh, your bones, and your skin, but combine it with this.
How does your body figure into it? Like when you say that, it makes me feel like staring at my phone on social media is like black and white television, and somehow the metaverse that we understand now is we will live inside
You
of
ever
it.
seen the what is called the Olympics of Paralympics?
The Paralympics.
Paralympics. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have seen how many athletes are already making sports, and also not only the athletes, but in general, these athletes are very strong and powerful because it gives to all of us, it gives a big, in the sports especially. And so we are already living with the body that is transformed. And the idea of using it with the devices that, okay, some are only aesthetic, but some others are really to help people that have some problem, like an operation or other problems. So, and this is part of our through technology to extend our at least to take back usage of your body that is lost for some reason. Nobody saying that you cannot improve or make it even better. It is an idea of using devices on yourself, on your person. So it means that the combination between a virtual world, or virtual space, in a physical space that can also experiencing this transformation. Even doesn't, I'm not saying that you need to do, everybody has to do for no reason, but at least the knowledge and this potentiality that we have is very important to have conscience about this, not to be afraid, not to be scared.
I
for some reason people it's not so understand. It's not so guaranteed that people have understanding this. Okay.
I want to understand the meaning of what you're saying. That's not the dystopian future in which the planet is in climate crisis and we have to stay inside and we're replacing ways we used to interact in a human way with state-of-the-art technologically designed interactions that then also probably make the climate worse, and then we don't I sound like a purist who's like, you should use pencils and oil on canvas, and I am trained as an oil painter, and if you don't mind my adding this to your interview, I actually, it's not high tech in a computer sense, but I have a large metal implant in my body, and I had to learn to walk again with it, so I deeply appreciate what you're saying. I'm not an athlete with an external prosthesis, and I have a wonderful sense of mystery about it because I wasn't conscious, so I mean I only know what they tell me is in my body, but so I think, you know, there's that too, but like what's the utopian part of that technology? Because I can understand the halfway steps on the way there that are like, and you know, NFTs allow this dignity of ownership, they allow distribution of governance rights, they help create infrastructures of economic sustainability that if we don't talk about in gross capitalistic ways, empower artists and can represent not just one person selling a superstar work, but lots of people in community. But what you're saying is really profound, and I take seriously that you are an artist experimenter far ahead of where my imagination of technology is right now, and I really want to understand what you mean about NFTs inside the metaverse. I feel like I spend so much time by myself after COVID that I worry about being a good candidate for the metaverse.
Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that technology has to substitute the nature, reality of things. I'm not taking the position of I don't want to look like I'm a fanatics of artificial and against the rest. No, not at all. I want to have both. For me, it's very important you are not discriminating, or that we are not considering that against the other. We are too easily, we humans are too easily this idea of thinking, this way of thinking, so that you are all the other, or one side or the other, or black or white. We cannot be like, we cannot think like this. Okay, we cannot think like the world is only one direction or the other. No. We are both. No, and I like the one of the latest readings Nietzsche is Apollinio Dionysiaco, no? Where basically he mentioned the instinct, Dionysiaco, and the rationality of Apollinio has to go together because they cannot separate. Unfortunately, and it goes against some a direction that the Western took since a position that went only through the Apollinian, so only the rationality and going against the instinct. That is the Dionisiaco, no, of the expression. So I think that the importance, no, like you were saying, Greeks were capable of combining both.
Like as a structural engagement in the mystery of shaping things that we've taken for granted, like the way that people are so much more on Zoom after COVID. I'm thinking about when you say that, pass it back over to Norman, but when you say that, it makes me think about my 8-year-old nephew having laparoscopic heart surgery with the surgeons in the room with him, but doing this complicated electrical mapping of his heart to fix something. And then I think about reading in the newspaper about a surgeon who operates on someone who's 5,000 miles away because they actually can use the same systems of robotic assisted surgery. So I really appreciate what you're saying about the not either or, and the maybe your dystopian future is like a yes and.
I don't want to. Yeah, I mean that's what is important. Important is that there are good things. No, there are positive things, like the athletics. They can keep doing their sport. Normal people, they can, after any problem, they can continue to live their life. What is it? This is not important. This is great. So if you have a capacity of using technology, I don't say that you need to use, it's like drugs or like alcohol. You cannot condemn the things because it's bad. If you exceed, it's bad. If you use too much, but in a small quantity, in a small proportion, can be helpful, can be positive. But because in our society we are used to think that the majority of people are stupid, and you need to say, no, you can do this, or no, you cannot do that. When in fact you need only to educate people how to use correctly. Because if you know how to use correct like technology, if you use technology in a correct way, and not just the young people, also the adults. Because if you see people when they started with the smartphone, started to have all those smartphones around, and everybody, you see many people doing or having a dinner, or sitting together in a pizzeria, and then they all speaking with somebody else, and they make big comedies, big jokes about this. We all know, but that's the reality. In Italy now they made against illegal to have to speak on cell phone if you're driving a car. But that's normal, of course. It's normal that you're supposed not to speak on the phone when you are driving in the car. No, they need to make a law. And still people are against, or they don't understand. But it's normal that it make it distractive if you are driving. No. And you still people, but even people that are going on a bicycle or walking on the street, and you see them walking and maybe passing the zebra across past the street with the cell phone with their phones, so they don't see the street, and they go under, they crash a car, a car that put them down under the. So that's an education. We need to have an education that make understand that the technology is important, but you need to also understand that other things are important that you need to use and not lose. No, cannot be like all those young people that are spending day and night playing video games, and they're losing the moment to maybe going out playing soccer with their other kids, and they can experiencing also their parts. I'm not against anything, but I want all to be together. Because it's impossible to separate. I never want to separate. The important is the dialogue. What is the most important is the dialogue.
And the educators, that was most fascinating, but both of you engaged in the, not only the expansion of the technology, but the roots of the technology and the, well, again, back to my favorite, the ecology of it. And I think that there's a certain part of the feeling that whatever is new is getting, if you look at the scales, that what is new is getting much more, both things have to be for certain. But with the sense that the technology, and I think the technology likes it that way, that becomes the more dominant. So this idea of education and literacy, I really think there's a media literacy that's lacking in new generation. They don't have this kind of reference or a human reference for, like, most other technology has a Thomas Edison or an Alexander Graham Bell, someone who like struggled and failed, and the technology has a human side. This not so much. It just seems it's just technology writ large. It doesn't have that human side. So I think things like the video artists, for example, not to be biased, but also the idea of the information sciences, for example, those types of technology. I never thought, archiving and library science could be so interesting until I tried to capture these lives and disseminate them, even though they're gone. And I think that's a part of this literacy that has to be in place. That will give the young people something, they're not going to have the experience of it, but some connection, a tether. Or we think of it as a food chain in a way that is ecologically sound. I think that still holds. I mean, and if we can just keep that metaphor, I think one of the things that worries me about the metaverse is that it's acausal. The ecology is all about symbiosis. It's all about interdependency. When you get into a virtual world that's acausal and that you can, shoot 14 people in like 4 seconds, it's not. And I don't mean that just in games.
I tell you this, in all the simulators, if you go to any jobs, from the surgeons to the pilots of an astronaut or airplanes, under the drones. We have the each of the drones.
Yeah.
You need to, how you learn how to use those. You learn how through those kind of metaverse, kind of virtual spaces that you need to simulate. Simulate is our age. Is this age of living a virtual world that unfortunately can affect in the real world, because if you are in the war through those new technology, new armies that can actually damage. But the fact is that you cannot leave technology only in the hands of engineers or the merchants of death, or to all these only this area of using those for this reason of interest of some kind.
Yeah.
That's why I want more creativity. I want more artists to use technology. When Nanjun and Shijiko were the pioneers of using videos, all of it. The Big Brother. Why we have this idea of to still today how much powerful are the media, and internet is even more. If we have people that even with internet they believe the earth is flat. separatist, and if you have it, you say it, which is the people that believe that it's. So if you think how much you can manipulate the brain of a certain people, mentality of a certain people, that's what convinced me that how much art needs to get involved, and how much culture needs to get involved in this process. Because more you leave all those media in the wrong hands, only in the hands of somebody, and all the humanistic people believe they don't belong to this world, and they making a little snobbish attitude. No, do not deal with this. And more you leave all these tools, this technology in the wrong hands.
Yeah, that's the exclusionary part again. If that becomes that's the only thing. So that continuity is important. In fact, in honor of Namjoon being here, that was famously credited with cloning the phrase "the information superhighway," and there's a great follow-up to that in his recent documentary, "Moon is Old as TV." You have to see. I have a copy. "Moon is Old as TV," but he tells David Ross, an old, long time friend of his in the household, and a member of our board as well. David recounts this story in the film that Namjoon's information superhighway was first of all about fiber optics. It wasn't really about the internet. But he calls up David one night in the middle of the night, and he says, the internet is not a superhighway; it's an ocean, and we're having trouble keeping our eye on the shore. That's the That's the danger.
The internet, the superhighway of Namjoon, it was broadcasting. It was completely, it was an analogic technology, it was completely great, wonderful, powerful, but it was in another age. So we have internet in the positive and in the negative way is the big revolution of this time. And of course we have on the opposite, the people who believe that the earth is flat, and also all those weird things that happen in the world, how much is possible to manipulate and to convince, and I don't want to go politics now. But if you start to see how much even important politicians are giving these propaganda, these ideas, believing and make people to believe that that's the reality. Making just like the crazy. And unfortunately, uneducated people, like the majority of our population, they follow these those Big Brother was saying. But how you can solve, how you can react, how you can make a contrast, because for me that's the most dangerous.
The NFT truth part is intriguing to me, that it does have, without a voice of authority, an absoluteness, if you can attach it to the right wagon, I guess it's.
When I was first introduced to NFTs around 2015 by a person called Sean Haas-Pult, we talked about this exactly, and these speculative projects that have never come to pass. Like, imagine that you could get the provenance of the source of your news because it was registered to a blockchain. So the blockchain became this infrastructure layer, so you could know where what you were reading originated, but that just really never happened. So I think the idea of truth and trust and information and blockchain, there's something really exciting about that from a governance standpoint, but then also how much does one have to understand the details of computer programming to do that? talked to Sean a couple of days ago, and he was figuring out how to use multiple LLMs and AI to try to train it to come up with answers that are true for things that he like information he needed in a way that I thought was like this very elegant way of using those tools, because they're very good at looking at the past, but they're not good at doing what artists do, which is to kind of confront the frontier of the future. So yeah, I think the truth part's really interesting. I also think what you said, Norman, about the ocean is beautiful and kind of hits me, and it also makes me think about how much of the internet infrastructure is actually dependent on the undersea cables. You know, I mean, I know there's satellite access, et cetera, but I have a
Fiber
colleague.
Or the fiber optic.
Yeah, I have a colleague, I'll think of her name, but an NYU colleague who studies the undersea cables that connect the internet across the world. And every once in a while, one of them gets sabotaged, but basically, you know, this entire world is also based on physical infrastructure that can get very
Achilles.
great, exactly. Yeah, it's great way of putting that.
I think it is there for the young people, and the education part is really the solution. And I think curriculum, who would have thought curriculum is an exciting science, but it really is important to codify some of these things. And again, we have a platform that Namjoon Shigeko gave us, and I always said I never wanted it to be a mausoleum, you know, where you come and see this kind of vital thing anymore, but it is vital now, and just to be here with one of the first analog video art talking about NFTs, and we'll continue to do these kind of things, I think.
Because they need a revolution. I mean, like all the avant-gardes, even all the artists, the Dadaists, they made a big, meaningful things. You know, it is not just the value, the market. Right? It's important to bring what the soul, what is the actual idea behind the idea. The revolution is behind, not the value that today, unfortunately, is the most discussed part. No, what's worth we have artists like, I don't know if you know, Piero Manzoni,
Yes.
Lucio Fontana.
Yes.
No? We are already, every time the people, when they want to say something, we want to criticizing something about modern art, they say,
I
oh,
know.
well,
Manzoni.
the man down,
Yeah.
Piero Manzoni, or the cat of Lucio Fontana.
And the Betty Bananas join
keep-
that.
the cat. That's unfortunately, I think, is the wrong parts. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not talking about Maurizio Catalan because that's another. I don't want to talk about it. But of course,
In New York, there was someone who taped a banana to the back of a crosswalk sign, and I was like, that's kind of fantastic. Like, you're just like walking up the street, it's like perfectly done. So that's all I would add to.
Okay, if you want to talk in
No,
terms
we don't have to talk about it.
of show business of the big show, that's fine, that's okay. It's well done and is wonderful. But if we talk about the actual meaning there is behind all the artists like Piero Manzoni, also Duchamp, like Fluxus, all those actions. Those are this is the energy that is behind. It is important to keep, not the value economical one.
It's also, there's a knowingness to what people are doing now, where they're making work at a time when they know that work that was made in the past gained economic value. And I think what I was really going back to was what you said, Marcello, about how your students are digitally native, but they've never lived in a time that they didn't have that. Because I think it's one of the great gifts of my life that I didn't have the internet until I was in college. And so I can see it. Like, I remember what it was like hearing the dial-up. And I think that there's something here, I don't know exactly how you design the curriculum, but I feel like there's something in Chiquito and Namjoon's work that might offer people an understanding, like a deep learning experience of what it's like to be separate from the digital for people who were born at a time that wasn't possible as a lived experience.
I can answer from my point of view. I mean, I don't care if it's digital, if it's analogic, I don't care. What I'm asking always to my students from the 14 years old to 24 years old is to talk, to discuss about what you do. So before I'm even start, because that's what the confusion that they always have at the beginning, especially. And it's about art sculpture or application for the art, they think that's only technology, it's only technique, pure technique. It's not what I started to do. I never started to master or to teach how to use that technique. I always started from a long discussion. We always started, for example, on topics like taboo, on topics like, for example, now the latest subject of the Venice Biennale of migrants everywhere. Another subject I give to my students, high school students, is the dignity and inclusion. Dignity and inclusion. Talking about, especially to the people with problems or handicaps of some kind, and having a long discussion about this subject. And then, where we start, I let them start to create, to make project drawings, and then also creating their own spaces. So that's why I don't like any technology, even if it's a pencil or clay. I don't like to start from nothing. So I always start from some concept or a specific problem.
I love that. I love that you use the word dignity, because I think that's
we should change it.
yeah, we really should. Yeah.
Dignity and inclusion.
Yeah, dignity and inclusion. Because dignity to me is I don't really care about the economics of art. I mean, I teach economics in an art school. If I cared about the economics of art, I would be bad at honoring my caring about economics. But I care about things like the dignity of the artist. When Solowit made work out of coffee filters and folded, ripped drawings, and he said these should never be sold for more than $100, and then people sell them for more than $100 now. I care about that, and I care about the way that certificates of authenticity are an analog version of the dignity of the artist to say, here's how I want my work to be represented, and here's how I want it to transact, and like I feel like we don't have good language for that, or forms of care of work that are creating containers so things, like almost like a boat, so things can move through a market unimpeded in the way intended by the artist. So I also am extremely bad at, because I don't really care that much, I'm very bad at putting prices on artworks. Like, I used to love a TV show as a kid called The Price is Right. Like, I used to be able to price macaroni and cheese in 1984 very well on a game show. And I like, oh, I love that painting at an art fair. What is it, $10 million? And they're all like, no, 1.5. And I'm like, I'm not buying
But
it either way.
but I'm not against
Yeah.
who is capable of doing it.
Yeah,
So I'm for the decalogue of the art before. I said
yeah,
this is important that who is capable, who is the merchant, the gallery, the dealer, who knows, who is capable. He has to do this. It's important.
yeah.
The important is not that doesn't do it the artist.
Mhm.
It's the artist that
Yeah.
is not possible that he is appreciate, he make a price on his work.
No, I agree. I think sometimes groups of artists can put prices on each other's work because, like, I could,
but
but
it's,
no,
it's,
no,
it's,
I-
it's,
yeah.
it's difficult. It's
It's-
difficult.
I
And
know,
I said, it's important. Each,
It's awful, yeah.
each person, each profession needs to deal with his own profession. If you are
Yeah.
a merchant, art
No.
merchant, not what I'm saying, if you are an art merchant, if you are a dealer, that's your work.
yeah,
That's your job. If you are capable of doing make this piece worth it, 1,000, whatever, good for you.
well, and it's a very,
Your capacity. But I, as an artist, I don't want to do it.
no,
I'm not capable of doing it,
no,
and I don't want to do it.
no, I have a literary agent, and I'm like, thank goodness that you can deal with those things, but at the same time, as a writer in current modern society, I always say that writers are asked to be the locus of vulnerability and the locus of enthusiasm. You have to sell your work, but then you're like, I know the part on page 40 where the paragraph wobbles, and I saw the really ugly typos and excruciatingly mortifying mistakes that were pulled out of the book 5 minutes before it went to press. And so I don't want to be the person selling it. But I do work in archives, so I see a lot of I was reading Leo Castelli and Frank Stella's papers a couple of weeks ago, and the humanity of it, some of which is economic, some of which is just funny, but also the way that people they have a sense of service to art, and everybody thinks Robert Scull, the collector, is a villain because he resold Rauschenberg's work for so much more money, he and his wife. But actually, he paid Dan Flavin's light bulb bills when the company's like, no, really, we're going to cut this guy off. He needs to pay for his light bulbs. So I think it's but dignity is and maybe elegance too, but dignity for oh no, that's an E word. I don't
Also
need
for-
to do- no, I
also
can't
for
think
the art.
dignity, elegance, and
Dignity
Thank
also for the art.
goodness for being recorded.
I love it.
I'm
No,
kidding.
dignity for the art is important, but not just to point on one part of the discussion about art. I don't know if probably here also there are many artists that pay to make show.
Yes, right. Yes, and we don't talk about that.
There are many artists that many times I've been asked, but not me. I know a lot of dealers that are asking money to the artists to show their work. Do you think this is good? Dignity. Where is
No,
the
I mean,
dignity?
I think and universities say you're lucky to teach. You should feel happy with whatever.
Yeah, but
Or-
that's also the parts that I'm insisting. No?
Yeah.
No, your profession. If you are a
Right.
dealer, your job is to sell art,
Right.
not asking artists to pay to show you their work.
Right. Because you're not doing your job to.
Right, and
Choose
that's
artists
what
that you believe
that's
in.
the confusion I was
Right.
talking
Yes.
before.
No, I agree. I agree with you.
That's the confusion we have all around, and we have a bunch of artists. Many are suffering on their life for this reason because they, unfortunately, the art world, there are still very capable people and people very good on doing their jobs, but there are also a lot of people that are completely fake. they are completely a joke, actually a bad joke of this art system.
And very, very
I'm
confident
successful at it.
and very
And,
successful.
and
at
that's
it.
what makes the confusion.
Yeah.
Because artists, that if there is this idea that to make art you need to have money, you need to be rich, or you need to give money to gallery, curators, etc., etc. When you making money from your work? No, if the system, I know, in Italy this is happening, I know that happening everywhere. This idea, this system, is spread all over. And recently, this idea, this system where those people are supposed to work on their area, what they're supposed to work with, they call themselves dealers, they call themselves collectors, etc. And they do complete other stuff. What are they? Speculators, what are they? I mean, people that steal money from the artists.
That's a-
Unfortunately, there is. I mean, I understand that if you are a famous artist selling a lot of for a lot of money, no, you share in making, no, the dealer has to make money too, and the curator, the critics, and everybody else. But everybody has to have their own profession, their own jobs.
Boundaries. Stealing money from the artist is a really profound.
Yeah, it's very big issue today. It's very big issue. I mean, I know a lot of people that are doing this, and a lot of galleries that are charging money to artists to make their show, catalogs, etc., etc.
That's one thing NFTs may solve that.
Well, that's the original reason I became interested in blockchain was because I thought that artists could own part of
Can
their
I ask
work
you,
and then they
can I ask
could
you
benefit.
a question since you work on, you're interested on NFTs. So, if you are in, if you believe that, like, I do too, no, that this can be a positive parts and possibility for the arts, for that kind of art, digital art, to get a market, to become a product to be collected as a unique pieces, not also I think for a mass production in terms of digital for a popular price. No, you said before the artist was charging $100 to make money, but also $1 charge for a piece. If you sell to 1 million people, you can make money, no? So in the movie or the music. So, my question is, in this reality, this opportunity that through the NFTs can be a new market, a new ways of making art for young generation. But how can be, how the system should be like the way it is, the same like the traditional or completely new?
Well, sort of what you were saying to me earlier about the metaverse is neither completely traditional nor completely new, but maybe both. So I think I don't want to say should, but some of what would be new would be for artists to have co-ops, decentralized autonomous organizations, so they can share risk and share upside of their work. And then artists could also still work with traditional galleries, but for me, there's this kind of simple logic, which is that it's really hard to know the value of art at the time it's being made in any category, not just financial value. It's really hard to know when you're making something, and art sometimes gets sold very early, and so it makes sense for the artist to retain ownership of a fraction of the work so that they benefit financially later. And if artists all did that, so all artists own 10% of their work. Same idea as holding work back in storage, keeping a little bit that you could sell later if you wanted, but without the physical freight of it. You could not only benefit when your work resells, but you could also create like a retirement fund for artists. You could create access to resources to make work. Like, if you're in an R&D mode, you need to be able to invest before value is known, so you could generate resources to do that. I'm trying to not use the language of capitalism. It's not like you could have cash or capital to invest. But you could. So to me, I look at something like artificial intelligence and the way that it's trained on so many different people's creative inputs, and I think that it would be possible to create like economic dignity to just reflect everyone who contributed to something and share back with them. So that's how I think about those systems, and how that relates to what you're saying about the metaverse and virtual reality is just, it's sort of related to what you said about being a teacher, is just, what does it mean for us to comprehend the whole picture of it so that we can design for value in the best possible way. And that includes crediting things that we get from the community. It includes paying the full cost environmentally and thinking ecologically, as you were saying, Norman.
You know why? Is that for me the possible development of this technology and NFTs in the metaverse, because you can really create a unique world inside the metaverse. That means you can experience those spaces created in purpose for this idea and this possibility. It means there is a very wide and open possibility. I'm not saying there is only one. It can be also a possible collaboration or a group of people that can combine and put the work together. It's like the figure of the artist, like traditionally it was. But the idea is a possibility to actually having a spectator that goes with his own avatar, is probably buying his own virtual space that he probably created, or he has somebody that created for him, and is already being merchandised of this, because you can buy a land, you can buy a space, you can buy there is already exist in this in those virtual spaces, and you can also add NFTs. So in this space, you already have an environment that fit inside this digital world. In the physical world, you have the contrasts, people that is selling the NFTs, that is making a box with these NFTs inside. So it requires a material object. That's why for me it's good. This idea is a fake, because it doesn't fit inside the real moment, the real what is the potential?
Inauthentic to its own medium or something.
Yeah, because it's like something new, some innovation is an innovation, but with the wrong environment.
It's interesting, the way that there's screen-based artworks around us. Like that is how my friend Sean interacts with NFTs in his home. If you're on a call with him, there's a vertical
But
Like, and
of course, it is not
yeah.
excluded in the
Right.
possible, like in a traditional market, definitely. If you have an artist that can also combine a physical object or an analogic video
yeah.
or another work, you can do it.
Right.
Can do that. But
Nice.
it requires also a traditional
Yeah.
market, a traditional.
You know what I think it is when I first learned about one of the metaverse spaces, the one I learned about was Decentraland, several years ago, and because of the nature of the people who had come in from the Silicon Valley side who learned about it initially, it had like a huge red light district and like, you know, not that it needs to have an art museum, but like no art museums. And so I felt like it kind of replicated some of the biases people talk about in the design of algorithms. But I think that the most important thing is really what you said, which is like when your students critique it and talk about what makes them afraid, you're saying it's happening and we're inside it. So it's not being positive or negative about it, it's simply being engaged. And
No, we need to know,
I
and
really-
discuss and talk.
Yeah.
That's what is important. The discussion.
And Marcello, you had an
Yeah.
8 o'clock meeting, so now, but you should call and maybe we can do